So we had Alice on the podcast today. This was an awesome chat. We covered so much stuff around, I guess a bit about self-help, a bit about mental health. We even dived a little bit into psychedelic therapy, which is something I have a strong interest in, and yeah, can't wait to hear more about it along their research and all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, Alice is a psychologist. She's got many things that she's doing. She's in Alice Springs, which I think she mentions quite a bit of the stuff that she's done at the start of the podcast and all that, which I'll drop all her links down below and bio. So go check all the social medias out and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, we'll jump in today's podcast. Hope you guys enjoy. How's it going today?
I'm well. I'm going very well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Welcome to the show. I'm pretty excited.
For having me.
More than welcome. Pretty excited for this chat, and like as beforehand, we were going down different rabbit holes and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the best way to start this, I'll go through, I guess, what you do, what you've studied, and all this, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So my study is in psychology. I am currently a clinical counsellor working a contract in Central Australia to set up a counselling service within a medical centre. And this is the first ever that they've ever had, which is fantastic. And my background is in forensic prison, stuff like that, child safety, domestic violence, Aboriginal medical services, behaviourism, autistic children, a bit of a wide breadth of background, but mostly just with oppressed people, I guess.
Yeah, that's really cool. I guess this go start off, I guess, with what we're talking about just before. It's like, I guess, around, the self-help and how, I guess, like true healing's actually through, I guess, community, as you're saying. And I guess, like, what ways, I guess what the self-help world kind of gets wrong in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely room for everyone. We are understaffed in all of the community sector, but I think that it's really important to be accountable for what your service is and what your kind of like where your allegiances lie. So a lot of the time with self-help, we are, being baited into a service, but with the kind of hidden agenda to buy something. So you're not just paying for the one-on-one or the group, you're also paying for their materials or, whatever it may be. And another thing that's really interesting about self-help is that, the code of ethics goes on and on about how we're not meant to hold like a dual relationship. So I can't be your boss and your counselor, or I can't be your friend and your client, because at the end of the day, it's really important that we have only one agenda, and that agenda is helping that person, even if it's out of line with what we want or what we think is best. So so there's a lot of work there with self-help, but at the end of the day, we can't fix people without thinking about the reasons that got them into this position in the first place. Like if your issue is intergenerational trauma or housing affordability or, relationships or loneliness, like those are quite external factors. So just saying simply, oh, you need to work on yourself more is not going to really fix the root issue. And, as a counsellor, I can work with the person to learn skills and so that they can advocate for themselves in that arena.
I was going to stop you there too, because like as someone, I'm personally like a bit more of an introvert, and then had a whole bunch of stuff as a child as well. And then as soon as someone said that to me, it like sounded so inviting, because it's like, oh, I can do this all by myself. And then it's like kind of realize, oh, I actually can't.
It's further entrenching the issue.
Yeah, spot on. It did.
Yeah. And like as a counselor, the job is like my goal is to work myself out of a career, out of a job. So if I'm trying to get you to come back and see me, like, how does that align?
That's something I definitely agree with, and that's why I look at it, especially with the coaching space and that it's like it's the same people that filter in and out of the same person's course and all that, and then going in and out, and it's like as like a professional, say even PT or anything like that, you want your client to kind of be able to go without you. You want them to come like almost better than you, for example, especially in the health industry. Yeah.
Definitely, push the baby bird and watch it fly.
Yeah.
We don't want to create a relationship of dependence because, that's another thing we have to be really mindful about, what they bring into the relationship and what we bring into it. So what are they projecting onto me and what am I, like, transference, counter transference, stuff like that. And in any relationship, like when you're paying someone, if it's a professional, you're kind of expecting something. You're expecting a result. You're expecting, this person to kind of be there for you or what have you. So, a lot of the time they talk about the transference of the parents onto the therapist. And if you're doing like reparenting work, then that's another layer that's makes it even more complex.
Definitely. Say, like, what do you see, I guess, as the flow and effects from people who kind of get stuck in the circle? Like, what kind of, like, say if they did come into the counsel room and they've done a bunch of like work with, say, a certain coach for a number of years, what kind of effects or flow and effects do you see that when they come too dependent on that one person?
Well, it's removing their autonomy and their independence and their self-esteem and confidence because, you're creating this relationship where they can't make a decision or make a step without you. And realistically, what we want to be doing is boosting their healthy adult side to so that they're able to be their own therapist and give the answers that they need to themselves and kind of walk different paths. Another thing is that I think people who rely heavily on services think that just simply turning up is enough. Like, that's the work, I've done it. Like, sorry, I don't need to be kind. I don't need to be polite because I go to therapy or I engage with this service. And it's can become a bit of a cop out because they're not actually doing the deep work within themselves to change, to heal the fundamental reasons. And we need support over the whole of our lifetime. But I guess it's like if it's not a new issue, that's when I start to have a little bit of questions. Like, if you're going to repeat the same content over and over again, are you actually internalizing it? Would be my question.
That's definitely true, because that's what I also found a little bit within myself. It's like you do get all this, great amount of skills, say in some coaching sessions and that as well. But then you go to step out on your own and there's like no support there unless you've like, continually, coughing up money and all that stuff as well.
Yeah. So support groups are fantastic. If someone had an issue like that, my first thing would be like, I'm sure there's so many different people out there who have the exact same issue as you. And have you thought about creating a meetup group or, are there other people that go to training that wish that they could get more or whatever, and really building a community around you that supports you, that is not a relationship based off of money, that is something that people are actually doing because they want to, and they're regardless, and that provides you a whole different set of feedback, because there are things that a friend or a peer would say to you that a professional wouldn't, because they'd be afraid of you losing you as a customer. So if you don't have a community or a friendship circle that can hold you to account, you might not be getting realistic feedback.
And that's so important to have, I guess, that feedback as well, because as human beings, I guess that's what we kind of thrive on, as we were talking about before. It's like community. That's how, I guess, as you probably know in your line of work, it's like that's when the central nervous system really starts to change. Is when you build, I guess, when you've done doing the work, but also doing it within a community as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like our concept of self is only determined by the interactions that we have with other people. And, even people who are really introverted and like to be alone, they end up experiencing the same kinds of anxiety as any other human being. I was actually having a counseling session today with someone who was saying, but I don't like people, I don't want to be around them, and just trying to explain like the root cause of anxiety and why we still have it, is that even though the threat is not a lion on the savannah, it's a perceived threat. Even if you don't like consciously care about the social group, if someone like gives you a bit of side eye or is a bit rude or what have you, it will give you an anxiety response, because what that meant in biological history is that you are looking at potentially being expelled from the social group, which would pretty much mean death. So it does feel like it's so important, like, oh, they didn't like my comment or what have you. And that's why. So it's good to keep that in mind. Like, we don't have that much choice over the biological mechanisms of our body. They're not listening when we say, oh, I don't like people anyway. So
I think that's like one of the big things that we forget, that we're still human, that we're a social animal, like, and these cues are there for like a reason. As you said, it's like if you get the wrong facial expression or something like that, it's like this, as you're explaining there, it means like life and death, and we kind of haven't evolved quick enough with all the data that we have. And it's like we've got to remember that as people. It's like, hey, like if this happens, this is why it's going to bring up this thing or that thing.
Yeah, exactly. Our brains are sometimes our worst enemy, because the job is to identify threats and keep us safe from them, and we don't have that ability to just run away and eliminate the threat. So a lot of the time, things that our brains are doing are to identify threat. And I love when people say, oh, I'm just a negative person, or whatever, because, well, hardwired, we are made to look for those negatives. So I guess part of daily work, or you might call it self-care or self-help, is holding yourself to account and saying, hang on a minute, that's just my brain. Yes, that is a perception of perhaps a bad thing, but I choose to be happy. I'm going to list 10 things I'm grateful for, and just kind of, I say, hack your brain, because we have a choice at the end of the day. It's really hard, but we have a choice to kind of which wolf are we feeding? Yeah.
Yeah, which I definitely agree with that. And that's why I guess like it comes back to the full circle of having that community there too, because like you have that reassurance as well of say like, okay, my head's playing this kind of game, and then you can always just ask that slight question, especially when you've had that close intimate relationship with the community around you, and then you can understand it's like, hey, that's just my head playing games and so forth.
Definitely. Yeah. And people may perceive a counselor or a psychologist to know it all and to have it all figured out and to be happy, but actually we're humans too. And you know, if I have a bad day, I'm ringing someone, I'm like, oh my god, this happened, rah, rah, rah. And it's not that I need someone to be like, have you done your breathing exercises? Like, I just want to feel heard and validated. So someone just saying, yeah, that sucks, sorry to hear that, like, that's all you need. You don't need to go to a counselor or a professional for that kind of response.
Yeah, I love how you brought that up, because that's something I've been talking about a few people and that, and it's like, that's the one thing as human beings as well, is like, we just want to be heard, like just be heard in the moment. Sometimes we don't want to necessarily fix the thing. That's one thing we've been taught in society. Like, you see someone upset or something along the lines of that, and the first thing we want to do is fix the situation. But sometimes, but more than actually, it's just sit there and listen to the person. Like, I think it's like someone says that you're a good communicator if you listen. I think it's like 60% of the time. Like, people think you're good to talk to and all that, but just sitting there and listening, one of the things that I've come across. But it's so, like, that's so important. It's just, people just want to be listened to.
Yeah, and that's a teachable skill, you know, and it's also a teachable skill to get your needs met. You know, I'll have friends who are in the same field, and they'll be like, do you want advice or do you just need support? You know, or just even simply calling and say, hey, do you have capacity for me to just go on a rant, because that's all I need. You know, I don't need you to say anything, just listen and validate my concerns. So yeah, that's all teachable. And you know, you don't have to be innately born as a good communicator. And I guess that's what it comes back to, the job as the professional is to provide you with the skills to meet your own needs. So you don't need to call me, or you don't need another session. You need me to teach you how to ask for your needs to be met by those around you who love you, you know?
What would you say some of the exercises would you give to people around, you know, teaching those needs and that?
So I guess back to like behaviourism, I'm always thinking like, what's the form, what's the function? So what is the form of the behaviour that I'm seeing or experiencing, and what is the function of that? So if I'm calling, screaming, ranting, raving, you know, the behaviour is attention seeking, and the function of that is to get your attention so that you give me that attention. So yeah, I guess breaking it down, there's this tool called like a functional behavioral assessment, and in that tool it's kind of like a flow-on effect where if there's a problem behavior, you can kind of supplement in like more appropriate behaviors. So you'd be saying, instead of starting a fight with my partner because I don't feel like justified or validated, just simply saying, hey, I'm really upset right now and I just need a hug, or, you know, whatever that may be. I think it's quite different person by person, but if you come back to what's the form, what's the function, or what is the core need that is not being met here, or that I'm trying to get met.
Yeah. I would like to touch on base on like what you just said there, especially with the partner like kind of aspect there, because it's something, because as you probably already know, this kind of dives from like childhood, I guess, because a lot of the time it's the first time that we get it. A lot of the time we get attention from our parents, it's because we're misbehaving, acting out. So then you get that kind of form of love.
Yeah. So whatever you pay attention to is what will happen more of, you know, with kids, with anything really. So yeah, I guess if you want to talk about kids, then when like what changes or shapes a behavior is love and positive reinforcement. So if there's a behavior that I don't like, I'll simply say, that's not cool, or I don't like that. But then when they do something that you do like and that you want them to do it again, then you're like, wow, buddy, that's amazing. I love that. I love it when you do that. It makes me feel so good when you do that. So they're like, oh, wow, rush, like, oh my goodness, I better do that again, like, stacking the dishwasher or what have you. So you can kind of, yeah, if you had a partner, it'd be the same thing. Like, if they were not listening to you, or maybe they were on their phone while they're talking, like, not angry or judgy or whatever, just simply stating like, hey, it doesn't make me feel good when you do that. I don't really like that. And then when they put their phone down and they're like looking in your eyes, like, wow, it makes me feel so seen and loved and supported. Like when you look at me, like, I really value that, babe. Like, and so of course they want to do that. And I think, we get quite confused with people wanting to blame them as like, he doesn't love me enough, or he doesn't give me enough attention, or what have you. But I've never actually explained to you that that's my core need, or how do you meet that need. So I don't need you to reply to my messages all the time, but I need you to schedule in 3 hours of a date night on a Thursday kind of situation, and being really clear about that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's just straight up, because it's like, I guess like the one thing, yeah, it's just communication. And we kind of expect people to know what our needs are without actually communicating them at all, which I find, even in myself, I do it too. Like I would be like, oh, they're not doing this and that. And I'm like, wait, I haven't even asked them, told them about it, kind of thing, creating scenarios. Yeah.
Yeah. The mind reader.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes back to back to childhood with attachment. But I love schema therapy. I love learning about it. I love doing it, and that all comes back to what it was like for you as a kid. And a lot of the times, nice people are kind of taught that asking for your own needs is selfish or self-centered, or if you bring the attention to you, if you have a demand, it's not going to be met. So there's no point even trying. And those are all just automatic messages that we internalize. So, the example I love to give for that one is like, are you the type of person who's your girlfriend's like, hey babe, let's watch Maths, and you're like, in your head you're like, oh, I hate that show, but then you're just like, yeah, okay, whatever you want, and then you just become resentful, and then you're like, you didn't let me watch my news story, but in your head you're like, I have to say yes, or I have to just be quiet and go along with whatever they want, because the risk is a fight or violence or whatever it was when they were growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely relate to that one a little bit. And it's something I've been trying to unlearn as well, which is it is quite interesting how much like your with childhood does set up, I guess, your whole relationship dynamics. I guess all about attachment theory and all that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the latest kind of research is coming out. I think it's the first 100 days. So that actually incorporates the time that you spent inside your mum's tummy as well.
Yeah.
So the things that were happening to your mother, what you were even like exposed to, like hearing wise, is really interesting. But yeah, I'm pretty sure like once you're 5 years old, that's it. Like it's all done and dusted. And you can actually change that. Like I know that I did a course recently with Harvard about psychedelic assisted therapies, and they were saying that the benefit of it was that it puts your brain back into like a neuroplasticity state, so you can learn or unlearn things just like you were a baby. But otherwise it's a bit harder.
Yeah, what's some of the research that's coming around that? Because I've done a little bit of study, listened to a few things around it. I have a friend, actually, he's looking into it as well. He knows a few people who are doing it.
Yeah, so it seems to be it's all happening around the world, but it seems that the pharmacology is evidencing mostly psilocybin, MDMA, and ketamine. So it's actually not recommended to use LSD at all. And a lot of people are actually pushing towards ketamine or MDMA, frankly, because it has a shorter life period. So you can actually see more clients in a day if you choose to use ketamine versus psilocybin, say. But yeah, it's all just about neuroplasticity, and the evidence is saying that across a lifetime, or maybe like, let's say 10 years later, 20 years later, the client is in a much better position than they were just plain CBT or whatever other normal therapies, I guess you could say. So yeah, so it's about lowering your defense mechanisms to get you into a state of almost like a trancey kind of meditation. Each drug or medicine has a different response. So with MDMA, that's just about empathy and looking at things from a different perspective. So that's like theory of mind, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And then ketamine has got some pretty amazing results with regards to the plasticity and the different parts that it lights up in the brain when you scan them on a machine. But what it comes back to, which is really interesting and sad, but mental health conditions, depression and suicide are the highest they've ever been. Like throughout COVID, I think it's like 70% increase. Like it's actually the largest issue today, and we're not getting results with traditional talking therapy. So something has to give. You know, these are people's lives that we're talking about. So yeah, so those kind of tools or medicines have been used, I don't know, as long as humans have been around.
Yeah, definitely. And like to touch base on that, they what's it? I don't know what what study it was referencing, but they did say it was about, I think it was 2025, which I think this has already surpassed the limit that mental health would be the #1 health issue in the world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they call it the age of isolation, you know, we're the loneliest we've ever been. And, you know, we could look at many different factors to explain that, but it won't solve it overnight. And as long as we are holding people to account, it's their responsibility to, you know, be accountable for their mental health. Yes, but also we're not going to change anything in society that might help you, like secure accommodation or what have you. Then we need to be looking at other ways, and science has to be led by results. It can't be led by politics, really.
No.
Yeah, so I think in America people are doing it a lot, and obviously in other places as well. But whilst people are being trained to do it here, there's not really any kind of framework to be practicing that. But I think there's a huge amount of clinicians who are doing the study so that if and when it does become tenable, we'll be ready for that.
Yeah, which is good. Like I don't know which doctor is one of the main dudes in America said Australia was pretty much one of the head places that are like in training wise compared to the rest of the world, especially around MDMA therapy.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because we're also one of the largest like producers, or like people actually making, growing all of those different things, but they're not actually consumed here, which is really funny. You know, we've got great soil to grow all of these different things. And I mean, yeah, I think the chemical that MDMA is derived from is an Australian, was found in Australia. I'm not too sure, but yeah, there's definitely scope to roll it out. But I think it's just the perception of it in society is maybe 30 to 50 years behind actual research.
Yeah, like I definitely agree with that, especially when you I guess because in Australia too we are very conservative, especially for what I guess later generations as well. And when you talk to people about it, they just kind of look at you weird, kind of thing. And they're like, no, it's not like that.
Yeah, but let's name it a drug, let's name it a medicine, and let's compare it to all other medicines. Like,
Mhm.
obviously we have just such a huge opioid dependence, and then also like Lexapro, Prozac, like whatever antidepressants you want to talk about, they have side effects too. And actually they have found that it is healthier to treat people with doses of these alternative medicines than for someone to be on a specific drug for potentially the rest of their lives. Like, it's not that you'd be taking ketamine every day. You would be doing it once, maybe a fortnight, maybe once a month. They have guidelines around that, so you wouldn't be doing it all the time. Actually, it is interesting. You can go to a pain clinic and get a ketamine infusion for back pain or whatever, and they end up being drug free, so other painkillers, for about 7 years. But yeah, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but they don't fund that for depression in Australia. So people who do want to seek treatment for treatment-resistant depression have to pay out of pocket, and they don't get the same kind of subsidies. Because it needs to be done in the hospital in a pile driver, syringe driver. So hopefully things change, but we'll see.
That's it. Yeah, I might wrap it up on this question, especially since community's like another big thing, I guess something we can help with our loneliness and the self-help and that as well. I guess three insights you would tell someone to help to create their own support network.
Well, I guess the first one is vulnerability. So invite in feeling vulnerable and being vulnerable and saying in a, really kind of genuine way, like, I'm just really not doing too well, and it would be really helpful for me if you could just spend some time with me. So being vulnerable, asking and giving a concrete example of how you want your needs to be met. Like, hey, I'm not doing too well. It would make me feel so awesome if you had time to go fishing on the weekend. Like, I love hanging out with you. It fills up my cup, whatever. And then I guess the third one would just be kind of really humanizing yourself and like throwing off the shackles of, being perfect, or the ego, or the professional, or whatever typecast you're in, and just knowing that it's a human experience. In fact, we probably all experience that most of the time with all of our other issues, and that maybe I'm the one that my friend needs me to ask. Maybe they're feeling exactly the same way, So just kind of throwing the ego out and just being like really humble and human, normalizing it, really.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. They're all good ones. But thank you so much for coming on the show and all that kind of stuff. It
No
was
worries. Thanks for inviting me. It was awesome to chat.
more than welcome. All right, cheers for tuning in today's podcast today, guys. Give it a like, comment, let us know what you think and all that jazz. Also, too, if you think it will value a friend, feel free to share it with them. what else too, if you want to support the podcast that little extra bit, feel free to head over to my website at www.mitchellcrocker.com to purchase a t-shirt, or head over to Patreon, which I'll link that down and below. And if there's any way that I can support you guys at all, feel free to send me a DM and any of my social media sites, or head over to mitchellcrocker.com for all my services and programs and all that kind of stuff. You need that extra support and all that. But yeah, thank you again for tuning in to today's podcast today, guys. Couldn't do this without you. But yeah, so peace.